Well, New York continues to be a city that reinvents itself every other decade. It embraces newcomers and it gives everybody an opportunity to move forward. And so I came here in the late 60s, mid 60s, and the city gave me an opportunity to not only move forward personally, but to engage new friends and new communities. I grew up in Washington Heights, but I got to meet Harlem and East Harlem and the Bronx, which are the neighborhoods that I represent right now. And so this city is a great city. It provides you with the opportunity to brush shoulders and elbows with other folks from around the world, and it makes you a stronger person. So I'm very happy of the opportunities that I got here. I wanted to play third base for the New York Yankees, but that never happened, obviously. And then as I grew older, my knees got bad. But just like any other kid, I was completely seduced by sports, and baseball was the sports that I love and I still love. And so, but as I moved forward, I was able to be mentored by a black Baptist preacher by the name of Dudley Rucker, who ran the White Rock Baptist Church, who was a great follower of the late and great Adam Clayton Powell Jr., who was one of his stronger supporters when the congressman was being assaulted in Washington. And I got to know Clayton Powell by reading the papers. I got to also see the Vietnam War on TV, and also became intimately connected with the U.S. Invasion of the Dominican Republic. So these three things, I think, the civil rights movement, the Vietnam War, and what happened back in the DR shaped my political views, and I think it made me who I am today. Well, New Yorkers are resisting, but the Trump administration has unleashed the hound dogs on immigrants, has pushed forward with the Muslim ban, although it has been considered illegal by certain courts. And just recently, there is an effort even to go after dreamers and the DACA recipients, young people that through no effort of their own came here as children brought by their parents. And this is their nation. They maybe came to the United States when they were 1, 2, or 3 years old. They've grown up here. They went to school here. They're going to college now. They want to contribute and pay their taxes here and make our nation stronger. But Trump and his administration and his deportation machine want to deport them to a country, in many cases, that they don't even know, that they have no family ties with, in many cases, that they may not even speak the language there. And so that's a reality on the ground. And we see ICE agents showing up in court. We saw how recently they showed up in a court in Queens, where there was a victim of a human trafficking case that had to go before the court. They show up in front of schools, hospitals. Folks don't even feel comfortable going into a police precinct to report a crime. And so a good chunk of our country is going underground because of the political machinations and the heavy-handed approach of the Trump administration. Well, being first has its privileges, but I'd rather be the best. And so if you say who was the first the baseball player of Dominican background, you won't know who it is. I know who it is because I'm a baseball buff. That was Ozzie Virgil. But if you say who was Juan Marichal, or Big Papi, or Pedro Martinez, everybody knows who they are because they were the best. And so, I want to be the best. I mean, I acknowledge and I embrace being the first, but if you're the first and you're not the best, no one will remember you. So that's, I think, a challenge to me personally, and that requires for me to represent all communities in the entire 13th Congressional District with the same commitment and strength. Well, it's kind of strange considering that the first non-native American that came to the island of Manhattan was someone that came from the island of Hispaniola before there was even a Dominican Republic or Haiti. His name was Juan Rodriguez. And he told a Dutch captain, if you don't leave me in the island, I'm going to jump ship. And he stayed. And when the Dutch captain came back, he found that he was prosperous. He had a trading post off the Hudson, and he had married Native American women and had a family. And so this was all before the colonies were established. And so the names of La Florida, Los Angeles, San Antonio, Colorado, Arizona, these are not names that just fell from the skies. There is a history there, a long history of the presence of many Latinos, including folks that came from the island of Hispaniola, which is now the Dominican Republic. So I don't feel as a stranger in New York or in North America. I'm a North American myself. I think his attitude, his personality, right? Harlem has an attitude and a personality of being resilient, right? Continuing to push forward regardless of the challenge. I think that that's important. Not all communities have that. Some communities are complacent. Other communities feel that there's like a privileged attitude that they have, that something should be handed to them in a silver platter. But Harlem has in its iconic views, because it is the diaspora, the African diaspora, capital of the world, not just of the United States. The entire world sees Harlem as the capital of the African diaspora. It has an attitude and a personality that if you push Harlem, they'll push you right back. And so I love that about Harlem. Well, that's a great example of how Harlem got pushed and how Harlem pushed back immediately. And the real estate interests that wanted to change the name of Harlem understood that this is not the meat packing district, or this is not Soho or Tribeca. I have nothing against those neighborhoods, but Harlem is a very special place, and it's iconic, and it's historical, and its legacy is one of the richest legacy in our country, and therefore we must preserve that name. And they immediately, when they got pushed back, rescinded in their efforts to try to change the name to Soha. So Soha, no way. Well, you got to dot all the I's and cross all the T's, and that means that even symbolic efforts such as changing the name of Harlem have to be confronted. But I think that as a community, we need to develop a strategy on how to combat gentrification, because success should not be at the expense of those folks that I represent right now. I want the neighborhood to be successful, but if it means that the people that I represent now are going to be kicked out of the neighborhood, then I don't want that kind of success. I want success to be inclusive in the folks that are here now. Nothing against people coming in, new folks. We'll welcome new folks, but we want to make sure that the people that live here right now are an intricate part of the success that will lift a neighborhood. And so gentrification often brings with it economic opportunity, but very little for the folks that are living in the district, and they wind up being kicked out because they, in many cases, could not afford to live in those neighborhoods anymore. So we'll have to figure out a strategy on how to ensure that everybody's lifted and that gentrification doesn't become really a major displacement effort for communities like Harlem. But let me go back to the gentrification piece. I think one of the things that we need to do is, because the success of Harlem has somehow been anchored in chain stores and big box stores at the expense of small businesses, we need to change that model and see how do we help small businesses, which are without a doubt the biggest employers in the country and in this neighborhood. And so how do we help the small mom and pop stores? What kind of economic opportunities are there for those businesses to thrive and flourish? How is it that we can give the big box stores who for many years kept people working under the poverty level, making those employees eligible for things like food stamps, Medicaid, Section 8. So we, in essence, the taxpayer, were subsidizing the workers' benefit package for those big companies. How can we subsidize them and not the small businesses, which are so important to the fabric of Harlem, to the personality of Harlem? I think that's the great challenge. We could start with that. How do we help small businesses survive and move forward. And some of the other things that I'm fighting for, as you mentioned, with immigration reform is one of them. I think that's been thrown upon us because the president began to push back against President Obama's executive orders, and clearly and quickly we found out that he was going to try to keep Muslims away from this nation unjustifiably and illegally, that he was going to try to deport as many people as he could. And so we were thrown like in front of this juggernaut, and we had to react immediately. But there's also the fight for labor rights that I'm facing in the Education and Workforce Committee, the fight for greater funding for education, and small businesses, which I'm also a part of the Small Businesses Committee, and how do we help them out? I think it comes from my family background. Early on, my grandparents, who were both factory workers, instilled on me this duty to help out. My grandmother used to force me to go be an interpreter for her friends in the hospital. It cut into my baseball times on Saturday, and I didn't like that. But I guess that I began to like helping people there, and so it's very deeply rooted in who I am as a person, and I hope that it continues to be my main priority.
Wonderful. And that's the second time you've mentioned the Yankees.
Okay.
Do you guarantee us a pennant?
Well, I don't know. We split the series in Boston this weekend, but let's see. There's still a lot of baseball to be played, and as I say always, baseball is played after June. From July to August, that's when you find out who wins or who loses. Well, they need to continue to organize, and they need to continue to be part of the greater resistance. Their voices need to be out there to resonate. I believe that the pressure is working. Had we not had pressure in the streets, and many of my constituents are providing this kind of pressure, the results right now would have been different. And what we see is that the Trump administration has not been able to get out of under these cloud of uncertainty and doubt regarding the Russian involvement in the election. We see how the Trump administration is still having a difficult time repealing Obamacare, how even their efforts to put forward a massive deportation campaign has stumbled, how many of their nominations have had to withdraw, and how even his sons and son-in-law are under a cloud of scrutiny and investigation. So clearly this administration is in trouble, and part of that is because people across America have gotten up and protested, and my constituency need to continue to be part of that response.
What would be different?
I would like to see some capital money come to the NYCHA houses, because NYCHA continues to be a place where families of working class families live there, but the condition of those buildings are in horrible shape, and we need the federal government to be a part of the solution with regards to housing. They need to be a full-time partner. So I would like to see some capital money brought in to help fix roofs, install new boilers, new elevators, and make these buildings habitable for families. I would like to see the empowerment zone shift from big box stores to small businesses and provide with the money that they still have available, $90+ million, some opportunities for mom and pop stores. And I would like to see us make a head start on pushing back on gentrification. These are three things that I think are critical for Harlem and the rest of my district. Oh, Harlem Week is very much a part of what Harlem is. It's emblematic of Harlem, and we're participating in this week, and we hope to bring some of the Caribbean African heritage from the Dominican Republic, which is a very rich heritage, to be part of Harlem Week and to be a permanent presence in Harlem Weeks to come in the future. Well, it's a very diverse district. This weekend, I spent some time with the Bengali community in Norwood in the Bronx. They're a strong, small business-oriented community that is in the northern tip of the district. And I need to represent them with the same commitment and same strength that I represent every neighborhood. And no neighborhood, including Harlem, should feel that I may be representing another neighborhood with more of an interest than I give to them. It's difficult because this is a very diverse district, but I think it's critical that I continue to show all the neighborhoods, whether it's Washington Heights, where I was raised, or the Northwest Bronx, or Harlem, or East Harlem, or even Hamilton Heights, that I represent them with the same strength and no privilege of one neighborhood over the other. Well, that my team is doing the best they can to go out there. My team is visiting NYCHA houses. My team is being present and visible on the weekends in street fairs. My team, this weekend we were at Go Africa, the festival on 116th Street. As I said earlier, we were on 204th Street in Norwood with the Bengali community. But we had 2 breakfasts in the Dominican community with leadership there. And so every weekend and every week, our team is out there at the community board meeting, at the precinct council meetings, making sure that we listen to everybody and we hear their concerns.
Wonderful. An adult.
Well, I came in with luggage full of dreams and hopes and aspirations, so I didn't have the slightest idea that I would wind up in Congress. But, I came here and I overstayed my visa. I didn't have my green card at some point. And now as I walk the halls of Congress, I could look at any congressional member right into their eyes and say, my vote is just as important as yours.